What's up, guys? MrAnimeRandom here, and it is the 12th episode of the Random Anime Podcast. Can't believe we've already done 12 episodes already. I have a few of the old crew with me and one brand new person. So let me go ahead and introduce you guys to Ricky,
How's it going? How's the crack in the boring brick?
Zach,
What the heck did he just say?
I said, what's the crack in the boring brick?
James,
Hey.
and our newbie who is jumping in for this episode and possibly more, Nate.
Yo, what's going on? Or better known as Watashi wa shi no kami desu.
Way!
Killing it.
One of us.
God of death.
One
Good
of
to have you,
us.
Nate, buddy.
So, for this episode, we are going to delve into. We've talked about 80s and 90s anime. We've talked about some of the bigger anime. We've talked about some of the more obscure anime. We've talked about fan service anime. We've talked about conventions. We've talked about a whole bunch of different topics. I figured for the 12th episode, let's talk about what anime is. What is it? I want to go ahead and delve into all aspects about what is anime from the beginning to the end, the final production, the pre-production, the whole entire inner workings, what it does to the different communities and everything else about anime. So this episode is going to be very interesting. I want to go ahead and start off with Zach. Zach, I want you to go ahead and give me a brief definition of what is anime. What is anime?
Well, according to the Webster Oxford Dictionary, anime, noun, a style of Japanese film and television animation typically aimed at adults as well as children. This is often compared with manga for Japanese entertainment.
Okay, so let me go ahead and try to break this down a little bit. It's Japanese, or it comes based off of Japanese content. Now, James,
So we're sorry, but Avatar: The Last Airbender is not anime.
Yeah.
it's animation, but it's
But
not
it's not anime. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's pretty darn close, though.
Now, James, a lot
Uh-huh.
of people go ahead and have this argument with me from time to time, but I don't think it's that often. Is it anime comes after a manga, or anime can come first and then a manga can actually come later?
Well, anime can technically come first. It's just like that's if they decide that they want to make it, have like the moving images and have like the voiceover and stuff like that. Then yes, it can actually come before. Sometimes like there's like little animated one shots before the manga, to hype it up.
And
Or,
what is manga? Just in case any of our listeners have no idea what a
manga
manga is.
is it's the they're like comic books, but they're all written right to left. It's like a very specific way of like doing it, and they do usually lead to anime. So when you're reading the manga, you'll often be like chapters and story way far ahead compared to the anime because it's usually set up beforehand. Usually.
Okay, now we're gonna go to you, Nate. Nate,
Okay.
since the listeners have not heard anything from you yet, tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about yourself. So just give them your name, obviously, Nate, your
Yeah.
age. How old are you?
I am 27.
You're 27. So when did you first start getting into anime? When was
So-
kind of like the first upbringing of anime, you getting into the culture, into
Yeah,
the lifestyle?
I probably started watching when I was 18.
Okay.
And the first one I ever saw was I don't know if you know the name, if you
Go
guys
ahead.
ever seen it, but it's called Girls Bravo,
I have seen that plenty of times.
and you can guess why.
Well, because of the plot and
Yeah.
because of, bathtubs
It has a
and all that
great
other
plot
stuff.
to it, yeah. And then I drifted off into Rosario plus Vampire, and
That's a good one with plenty of
Plot, more
but
plot.
no, there is actually a nice plot to that
Oh,
show.
there is a nice plot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's
Plot
there's
in both
there's a literal
definitions.
plot. There's a literal plot and a
Right.
quote unquote plot, right?
But
Yes.
then I started digging more into it, and I've seen like 1,000 anime. Uh, the
All right,
most
so
okay.
go
Go ahead.
ahead. The most
Uh,
recent is what?
the new one. It's called oh, what the hell is it called? I would do anything for my daughter, kill a demon or something like that. Kill a demon
Yeah,
lord.
I've
It's-
I've
Oh yeah.
I've heard of that one. That
yeah,
one
yeah.
actually sounded pretty good.
It
But
is. He picks up this little girl out of a forest. Her father was killed in the forest, and he picks her up and takes after her.
I gotcha. Yeah,
Pretty
that's
good.
that's a general synopsis. I mean, we try to do our best to not do any spoilers on
Oh
here, so
yeah.
just
I mean that's
yeah,
it's generalized.
Well, that's
yeah.
like a major plot point. You can't
Yeah.
really say that's a spoiler.
No,
I mean that's the first episode.
I'm just making sure that the listeners know that that's not like a spoiler or anything, so
Yeah.
don't worry about that. Now I'm gonna bounce over to you, Ricky.
Mm-hmm.
Ricky, if I were to go ahead and say, well, you know what, anime is just cartoons. Tell me, tell me why I am technically wrong. Why it's not really cartoons. It's different. Why is Japanese animation different than, let's say, American or westernized cartoons?
Well, you're not really wrong. I mean, anime is cartoons, which I know is sacrilege, but it's a fact. Like, anime is cartoons, but they're cartoons from Japan. But like when you think about it, like there's some things like Big O or Panty Stocking, which really don't seem like your typical run-of-the-mill anime. As in like something like Sailor Moon and Naruto.
Yeah.
But yeah, they are because they hail from Japan, despite the Western influences. And the reason why I really like anime is because I think because I just happen to be a big animation fan in general, and Japan offers a lot more very interesting things animation wise.
Mhm.
Like if you're looking for fights, you're looking for comedy, you're looking for plot, tick tick tick
Right.
plot.
Yep.
It has a
Well,
lot to offer, like, and it has a lot to offer over the decades, like. So you're never short of entertainment. Like, there's never a time where I said, you know what, I think I've seen all the anime has to offer. Like, so
would
yeah,
you
anime are cartoons, but
would
they're
you
flipping good cartoons.
would you say though that it's different from cartoons because of the audience that they generally try to portray to? Since I'm not saying all anime is like this, but I would say a decent amount have either the fan service where it deals with the women that are have very nice assets, or it has the guns and the violence, the weaponry, the blood and the gore and the guts and the that kind of stuff, or the cursing, the language, the calling each other names all the time, or the sexual type of stuff, or it kind of hypes up what, to me, cartoons is it there is like the cartoon violence and stuff, but it doesn't seem like it takes it to like an extreme that the Japanese animation really does.
Well, honestly, I think that viewpoint's kind of fairly 90s-ish. Like when you think of like say like yeah, in the 90s and 80s you had all these OVAs like MD Guys and
Mhm.
Kite, which yeah, had the tick plot and had like gore out the backside and all that stuff like. But I mean since like yeah, it's a very 90s thing because that was popular with Japan in the 90s, back in the 90s over US side anyway. A lot of cartoons, not like the most challenging thing in the 90s is probably South Park. And even like the
Right.
first few seasons of South Park aren't that challenging. But like since then, Western animation I think can hold a candle if we're talking about explicit content wise, it definitely can like.
Yeah.
So, like, I think a lot of that has changed. I mean, what's the most violent anime that's coming out this whole decade? when you think about it. Like, I don't think it can hold a candle to what it was like 20 years ago.
He's right.
Now,
Hmm.
now I'm gonna bounce over to you, James. I know that you and I have watched anime for a long time, and pretty much all of us have watched anime for a long time. I know you kind of got started into it from a pretty early age. The earlier anime, like the anime from, 70s, 80s, 90s, are more of the traditional where they did panel by panel, they were drawing them. They weren't using as much technology to actually animate the anime.
Yeah.
Well, now the new anime, ones like, Fairy Tale and One
Sword Art.
Piece and Sword Art Online and even the really, really new ones like My Hero Academia and,
Black Clover.
Black Clover, all of these really, really new ones use more of what's called the modern art or the modern
I mean,
or
even
digital art.
Just modern technology.
I mean,
Yeah,
you also got to
modern
think about
tech.
like you got to think about One Piece too, because One Piece is like kind of a bridge almost, because like it started kind of like older school, and they've kind of like tweaked and adjusted as the series has gone on longer, because it's like been like 20 years now. What?
Well,
20?
true. No,
Hey,
So
excuse me. Can
there's
I jump in real quick?
go
yeah.
ahead.
I just want to point out that it's not all tech either. I mean, these artists are getting better and better with each decade too.
That's
Well, that
true.
is
Yeah.
Now it's more like a mix, if anything, where you could have some artists who do it by paper and some who do it by technology, or that
it's
they have to do first on paper and then they take it over to the technology side to
Yeah.
finish it.
if you
It's too complicated to explain.
if
It
if
depends
you
more so
look
on the
at
frames, honestly.
the animation style that was in the older anime versus what the newer anime is, you can definitely tell the difference, or you could definitely tell the era it was produced because of what technological advances were then versus now.
Oh, not
That's
only that, if you're watching the dubbed version, you can clearly tell by the mouthing. You can also
well,
tell by the terrible music, the old color palette that used to
well,
be very dull.
you could tell by a lot of different things. I mean, to me, there's definitely a lot of differences in what was the old school versus the new school.
Well,
But
uh,
go ahead.
the big difference is I think uh, the artists back then were a little lazier than they are now, because now they have to it's crazy how much drawing they have to do. It's insane. Back
It's
then
also
it
insane the
would be
amount of work they have to do.
yeah. Back then they would do it slower, but now they're doing it faster and they're like 0.0001 of a second in frame. It's crazy.
Well,
I don't think it was a laser thing. It was the fact like it was done with pencil and paper. So
Yeah.
paper was a
the
lot more time
I was
consuming and expensive.
I was watching a documentary online that showed different things on how they create anime or cartoons in general, but anime specifically. What they do is, and I don't know if you know this, Nate, they actually they'll take one cell, they'll take one image. Like, let's say the character is posing about ready to go into battle,
Yeah.
and the character is going to go ahead and summon, let's say, some sort of inside power that they have. Like, let's say they have,
Yeah.
let's talk about Yu Yu Hakusho because I love talking about Yu Yu Hakusho with the spirit gun. Right, he's about
Yep.
to do the spirit gun. He's getting ready to generate it. He's pointing out his finger to go ahead and shoot it off and everything else. Well, what they'll do is they'll position him standing, right? The artist draws, does all the details. They'll position him with his finger out, and then they'll have the final where the blast is like hitting or about to hit whatever target
Yeah.
he's going for. Well, they actually, the companies or the different illustrators or whatever case might be, they'll actually take all the cells, they'll bring it majority of the time, not always, they'll export all of their projects over to Korea,
Oh wow.
and Korean artists will actually draw all of the in between, like the flip book. So they'll do the
Whoa.
in between steps. So you actually have Japanese artists drawing the main
Yes.
people or the main characters
Oh, that's
or
crazy.
buildings
Wow.
or whatever it is.
How very American of them to export their
And
job.
well, and then the Korean artists will go ahead and draw all of the in between cells, like the action
Yeah.
cells, they
I
call
mean,
it.
it makes sense. I mean, it'll take less time, and you know.
Now, I'm not saying that they do it for all anime either. It's just for I saw that in, some of these documentaries that they will use or outsource those different, resources to get those action, sequences taken care of. And a lot of Japanese artists will do the entire thing, but sometimes if they need the work done quickly or if there's a lot of action happening, they'll outsource the material to get things, done. And you won't really even notice
Right. Probably My
because
Hero.
right,
Like that.
different things that they go ahead and do. But I thought that was actually pretty interesting and cool. Now going back to what is anime, we talked about the definition, we kind of talked into the illustration portion of it. The other thing I really want to get into about what makes anime anime, which I'll ask you, Zach. This specific question, I think a lot of the listeners would definitely like to hear your input on this. What genres, and kind of just briefly go into them, what are some of the genres that you have for anime that kind of makes anime?
Oh man,
What are some of the
I'm trying to
genres?
keep it PG. All right. First of all, obviously you have the shonens, which are by far some of the most popular anime out there, which is shows like One Piece, Boku no Hero, Dragon Ball Z. All those are
Naruto.
Naruto. All of
Bleach.
them are Bleach.
Yep.
Just keep going. We got so many to
Yep.
go through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like some of the most, a lot of the most popular are shonen because it appeals to the core demographic for that area, and that is mostly guys.
Yep.
Which their specific demographic is usually teenagers, tweens, and older that want to see. They want to see the cool special effects. They want to see the fight scenes. They want to see. They want to see all this violence, but they kind of tone it back a bit so it's not horror.
So what would be kind of like another genre that you would see typically in anime, or in certain anime they would be this genre? Which what are some of the other genres?
In most modern anime, they will have of some sort of slice of life.
What is slice of life?
It's basically like any kind of situation where you would be in a normal day. So like you're following a person going to school, or they're out doing some sort of trip or something like that.
So it's regular normal type of things, whereas the opposite genre would be what, sci-fi, right?
Uh, yeah, it would be more sci-fi. I would say the opposite of that would be more of the, because like slice of life almost is to the point where you could think of somebody walking around with a video camera, and that would
Pretty
be slice
much.
of life. The
Right. It's
opposite of that would be more of like mecha.
Oh
well,
man.
mecha could kind of fall into its own category, which
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I think a
Yeah.
lot of people have their own love-hate relationship with mecha. I mean, for me personally, I grew up with an eclectic grouping of anime from mecha to shonen to slice of life and
Fan service.
fan service, everything. I've grown up with a big mix of anime. I mean, for me, I'm gonna kind of jump onto this one with
What about
mecha.
the anime that is not to be named
Well-
but starts with an H?
Well,
Horror.
most of horror.
Oh,
Um,
The
God.
other one.
so
Tokyo Ghoul.
the
Oh,
most
the
of-
other one.
so with mecha, you have it's called mecha for a reason because it's short for mechanical.
Gundam.
And it
Gundam. Gundam.
normally deals with any type of robots, machinery,
Mm.
or where the main plot of the anime focuses around, spaceships, machinery. Um, in Gundam, it's about these big robots. It's about or Zoids. It's big robots
Oh,
and
Zoids.
Big
Yeah.
O
Tiger
had
Zord.
big robots, and
What about
you
Darling and the
have-
Franks?
Yeah.
Oh,
there's a lot of anime out there that
Mm.
will be in the category of mecha. Now,
Hey, Mr. Anime Random.
what's
Here's a cool question for you. If Power Rangers was an anime, would that be mecha?
yeah, it'd probably be mecha.
Hmm.
It would be action adventure mecha,
Kids.
and slice of life.
I thought it'd technically be kaiju.
I mean, it could be a whole bunch of different things, but with all of these different things that we're kind of building and stacking on, hopefully you're starting to get the idea, those of you who are listening, of what an anime is, if you have never heard or seen what an anime is ever before. So, with all of what we have said thus far, many of us, including my generation, which is the majority of the guys that are within this group, we can all attest, or most of us can attest, that we watched anime through Toonami. That's kind of how we got
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
introduced
Tsunami, my
to.
baby. I love Tsunami.
That's
That
how
or
we got.
WB Kids.
That's
Oh,
how we
Kids
kind
WB
of
was
got
my favorite.
introduced to
Yu-Gi-Oh.
anime. We were watching Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon, but we also were watching the shows that our parents didn't even realize we really shouldn't have been watching when we were extremely young. But
Sailor
we watched
Moon.
it anyway. Well, Sailor Moon was
Cowboy Bebop.
not so bad, but I would think that watching like Dragon Ball Z with all the violence,
Mm.
or watching Rurouni Kenshin with all the violence,
Yeah.
or watching Tenchi Muyo with all the
Oh, yeah.
the sexual
Inuyasha.
innuendo stuff.
Even
Or-
Naruto's
Can I
pretty.
give a shout out? Sorry, lads. Can I give a big
Naruto was
shout out
on
right
two
now?
places, Nickelodeon and Comedy Central.
Naruto is
Right.
pretty violent for what it is.
But
Yeah.
but for the most part, we had something that was different and unique than what the regular cartoons were. Yes,
Yeah.
there was a lot of cartoons that we grew up with that started off and were made in America that we loved and everything, but this new style of animation came out, which it's been out for a long time, but came out in our eyes, in the market, in our view, in television and movies and everything else.
Yeah. You know what the
Because-
funny thing is about the modern day, like the modern day kids who are watching anime? We grew up watching like WB Kids and
Mhm.
Toonami and Comedy Central that would sometimes have it. Now you have still Toonami
Mhm.
and Disney.
Right. No, you would have different things.
Like,
The
anybody else think that's weird that Disney has the rights to Pokemon?
Yeah, that's
It
weird.
needs to go back to Cartoon Network. It's sacrilegious.
well,
Over here, it's CTV who have the rights.
Wow. How did they get the rights?
it's probably just battling
I mean-
between
It's Disney
different
satellite over here.
You can watch anime for free online, anyways.
rights.
Oh no, no, yeah, you can watch it
no.
illegally online.
But
This is not sponsored by Crunchyroll.
Yeah, there you go. We have talked about the illustrations. We talked about the genres. Where it got introduced, at least for the Western front, I know it was Toonami. I don't know where it was introduced or how it was introduced in places such as Mexico or Canada, but I know at least for the United States it was Toonami, how it kind of got popped in.
Animation.
A lot of the older generations, the ones who kind of grew up with Astro Boy and Voltron and a few of these other ones, they stumbled upon it through other means. I don't know exactly how generations before us got introduced to anime, but I know that at least for us, that's how everybody who I've talked to right around our age, the mid late 20s,
Yeah.
that's how they watched anime. That's how they knew what anime was and
Good
is.
old 90s boomers.
Right.
Well,
Now,
that would be a good question to find out, like, how people back in
Right?
like the 60s and 50s
Now-
found out about anime. Because remember,
now the
most
other-
of these people were still coming out of World War II, so they might still have that "we don't
So-
like Japanese" sentiment.
so now
Back to
I'm
the-
going to get into a few other topics with what is anime. Nate,
Yay.
I want to
Mm.
go ahead and ask you something that you may or may not have known.
Uh-oh.
Now, that is, do you think that when watching anime that you understand everything that is going on culturally, meaning the way that the characters interact with each other, the way that the characters eat, for instance, or sleep, or how they live, or what kinds of things do they eat, or what kind of activities do they like
Right.
to do,
I understand what you're saying.
or so how do you feel about watching anime living in America?
Right, like depending on where you live, we live in America, right? So we're not going to understand everything that's going on in anime, but it is fun to watch and learn everything they do. It's pretty cool. At least I think it is, and
Oh yeah.
probably
Do-
everyone who watches anime does.
Oh yeah.
do you think, Nate, that when you're watching and you're trying to learn some of the cultures, I'm sure that you, among many other people, will actually try to study the culture, Japanese
Mhm.
customs and traditions, that you actually see a lot of Japan is being put into anime.
Oh
Not
yeah,
just
huge
not
amount.
not just, oh, they're in Tokyo right now, or oh,
Right.
they're actually saying that they're in Japan right now, like the characters. I'm talking about, one of the traditions which we mentioned in a previous episode. I forget exactly which one, but when the characters enter their room or their apartment or their house or whatever,
Or before they eat.
they always take off their shoes right at the front door.
Yeah.
That's actually an Asian custom. I believe it started off in Asia. I I'm not certain if it was either China or Japan. It was
Mm.
it was one of the
China is older,
it
so
was one of the Eastern Asian cultures, I believe, that introduced that custom of leaving your shoes at the doorstep. I could be completely wrong, but I know that in just about any anime that I watch, they go inside their apartment, they're tired,
Right.
long day, and they kick off their shoes right at the front door, and then they walk in.
Yeah.
Or when they are going into school, they take off their shoes and they
Mhm.
wear their wabaki, which is their like slippers.
yeah, slippers, so they don't
Or
get cold or something like that.
what's that?
I think they use that so they don't get cold or something.
It's a mixture of don't getting cold, and it's also
Comfort.
trying to keep the keep the school clean and everything else.
Mm.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
I do
all
that.
about
I
hygiene.
take my shoes off
Yeah.
before I get my house now. Like I've been doing that for a while.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's being adopted in America real fast.
Yeah, I'm
There's
like
Yeah.
always
It's just
doing
a
it.
comfort thing. Who wants to wear shoes
I mean, yeah,
all day?
it's great. It's great.
Right.
There's a
I'd
lot
rather
of
have my grandpa slippers on all day.
there's a lot
Just
of
trudge
there's a
along.
lot of different things that are pulled within the Japanese culture or pulled from the Japanese culture that are put into anime. And then there's
Yeah.
things that are westernized that would, if you watch an anime in its purest form, meaning directly from Japan, with subtitles or not, and without the things being changed, meaning just subtitles, direct subtitles where they're not changing up any type of whatever they are, you're kind of getting it in its almost purest form. I mean, obviously,
Right.
no subtitles at all in the Japanese voiceover is the purest form of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we won't. Most people in America would not be able to understand what's going
Yeah.
on.
Not a lot.
And that's where a lot of the language barriers and everything else happen. But for
And
the
that is
most part,
why they
you do
invented
get,
Japanese for Dummies books.
yeah, I mean, for the most part, you do get a sense of what Japan is about. And the main things about anime that I think gravitated a lot of everybody. I mean, to me, I got stuck into it, or I got kind of pulled into it, not just how it got introduced to me, but because of me just liking cartoons in general.
Yeah.
I saw
Mhm.
it as a different form of cartoon, yes, and it was more stuff I could go ahead and watch. I wasn't stuck watching repeat episodes of
Right.
whatever America, studios were producing at the time. So
I
I
feel
could
like there's a
watch
difference. There's a
new
big difference
things.
between American and Japanese because when you want to watch anime, you want to watch like the whole thing. You want to binge it. You,
Right.
with America,
Not
you're like, oh, okay,
necessarily.
next week, let's go.
I mean,
Hey,
okay,
there are a lot of anime you cannot
Well,
binge.
Yeah,
There
there's
Sailor
a lot
Moon
of
is not a
stuff, and
bingeable
there's
series.
actually cartoons that
Right.
you can binge. You know, I'm saying there's some American stuff that's actually like pretty
there's
good.
yeah, I mean
In
there's
this
there's
day and age, a
definitely
lot more
Yeah,
stuff
I
is
know,
being
but
made streaming from
usually you
everywhere.
find that you want to binge anime over
Oh yeah,
here.
I'm just saying that they're trying to step up their game a little bit.
now
Yeah. I mean,
now I'm
look at
gonna direct
look at
this
these
over
two. You
to
got South Park and Pop Team Epic, and I'm like, it's almost the same show.
with with you, James. I'm gonna ask this question over to you.
Okay.
When it comes to anime and getting produced in Japan, coming over to America, because
Yeah.
again, most of us here right now are in America. Um, do you prefer it in its almost rawest form? Meaning, do you prefer the subtitles, or would you rather have it be dubbed and watch it in dub?
Okay. So, I mean, realistically speaking, if I'm gonna be watching anime, if I'm gonna be binging it, like the first watch through, I can often I'll sit there and I'll binge it in subs depending on what it is. If I watch like One Piece, sometimes I don't watch that regularly until they have all the dubs out, and then I'll watch all the dubs. Like depending on the show, really depends. Sometimes I'll start watching a dub and I'll go, oh man, this dub is just not as good. Usually I like to like I'll be reading the manga or I'll be watching the subs and I'll see that there's a dub and I'll go, oh man, I would love to watch the dub because I kind of want to see like what the characters like what the voices they choose for the characters like who
Yeah.
they're it
No,
really depends. It's not like something I can like necessarily pinpoint. Mostly I'll go for dubs because I like to kind of like I like to be able to like watch the show and kind of
right.
like you know, because like if I'm paying attention to the words, that's easier for my like how I think. So if I'm listening to the dub, then I can like pay attention to the whole show instead of like watching the subtitles where I'm like, oh man, what is going on? Oh man, I just missed the cool fight scene. What is that? Oh,
Mm.
okay,
And
very interesting.
and
Ha, yeah.
Ricky, I'm gonna go over to
Yes.
you now. Here's a question for you, especially since you're in Ireland and everything. If anime is Japanese animation where they take essentially what would be considered a comic book, but it's the Japanese drawings that could potentially be colored or not colored. They animate those different images or characters, they voice over them, put music and all this other stuff combined to create the anime. Do you think it's just that, or do you think that anime is really a bigger picture? Do you think it's more of like a culture thing in general terms, meaning it seems like anime has spawned so much. It's spawned conventions, it's spawned cosplaying, it's spawned, online,
Like the Black Plague.
you know, conversations about different things. It's spawned so much, and it's a multi-billion dollar industry. Billion-dollar industry. I wouldn't be surprised if it's worth more than that.
Well, yeah, it is more. Well, it's definitely worth more because I mean, a few anime franchises alone are worth millions and billions.
I
Like,
think
but
they said 11 billion when I last looked.
to get back
Freaking
on track though,
Pokemon's worth like 5 billion, but that's
Right.
like that's
It's
just
it's
ridiculous.
it's definitely worth a lot. Now, Ricky,
hmm
the anime over by you, because you've been in Ireland most of your life or all your life,
all my life basically, like it's where I live.
right? How is the culture over there? I'm talking about your friends and everybody that you know that actually like anime over there. How is kind of the culture built over there?
Well, like when I was a kid, I started off with Pokemon and all that stuff. Like I'm around your age as well. Like I'm nearly 27,
Right.
and Pokemon was the big, most anime thing people saw here. Like, and most of it came through satellite TV. It didn't really come to national TV until very like 1999, which again like would have been stuff like Pokemon and Sailor Moon and Metabots and all that. Like, and then later on when kids kind of grow, that stuff.
Right.
Basically the channel that was Toonami to you, I mean the segment that was Toonami to the Yanks was a channel called CNX for a very brief window of a time, and that was a
Okay.
great channel. And we mostly relied on videotapes or DVDs over here, and like the anime scene was very like you're a flipping nerd, like if you're into all that stuff.
Mm.
And it's gotten bigger, it's gotten more mainstream, definitely like. But people like back then, people wouldn't know. Like if you went to somebody and said anime, they'd instantly go to Pokemon because that was the most popular one, or the worst place to go to plot shows because people hear that in horror stories.
Oh
But
yeah.
now a lot of people have a gist of what it is like, and they're aware it exists because it's on Netflix. It's become more
Mm.
mainstream. But I wouldn't quite call it, mainstream appeal. It's just it has its own set, like it has its big following. But and everyone is fairly aware of it. Like even my mom, who's God love her, she's 68 now. She knows what it is. Like you
So
know,
so now I'm gonna ask you, Nate,
yeah.
if we mention like the illustrations and how it's changed and just a little brief introduction to that. We mentioned some of the genres. We mentioned kind of how it's spread throughout some of these different areas. Different generations have grown up with different kind of anime and they've seen it different types of media, whether it was television or movies or streaming online. um, we've talked about, kind of the culture and all this other stuff. Do you think that for the most part, we summed up what anime actually is?
All right, so let me just give like a broad thing about anime. It's usually it starts with one idea from the artist, then it goes to him making it, and then it goes to hundreds of people, and then they all come together and come up with ideas and strategies of where to go, where to put it, and everything. And then it doesn't come directly to the audience. They have like all kinds of meetings and stuff to talk about where to put it in magazines. Sometimes it's a Konami magazine or something like that, a Shonen magazine. And then if it gets like good reviews, it'll usually if a manga gets like really really good and sells a lot, it'll get green light for an anime. So yeah, that's pretty much the story.
Now, I'm gonna go ahead and direct this question over to you, Zach. If anime comes from Japan and you have all these Japanese artists, you have some very famous or some that are up and coming, or you have studios that will produce, so you have multiple artists or multiple people collaborating together on all these different projects. Is anime for everybody, meaning can anybody anywhere just go ahead and create an anime?
Yes, but it may not be called anime. It just depends on where you're at. It could
Okay.
be. You could do it in an anime style, but it might not be called anime. It'll be called a cartoon, depending on where you're at in the world.
So the true anime, we can all agree, and this is kind of directed to all you guys once I'm finished with this. We can all agree that anime is Japanese artist style,
Yeah,
which
that's
is
why
put
people
to,
have to get
Artist
licenses
style,
from.
which
no.
is put together, and a, the true 100% genuine is originated from Japan.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
Yep.
absolutely the last part.
especially
So
because the America Funimation has to get licenses from Japan to bring it over here.
That's true.
So I think for the most part, we pretty much summed up what anime is for all those who have never heard about what anime is, or who really don't have an idea what anime is, or if you're thinking about watching anime but you have no idea whether you should or not. We have all grown up with anime, or we have at least watched anime for a long period of time, seen a whole bunch of different anime. We've watched and we have been in many different areas, so we have adapted into our own culture what the Japanese anime culture has produced, whether we do cosplaying or role playing, or we talk in forums or blogs, or there's
Podcast.
all these, or podcasts. For instance, the Random Anime Podcast. But all these different things encompassed together form what is anime, and we all love anime. We all have different reasons why we got into anime, but for the most part, it's all a big community of people who have this liking for the art that, or uh, not just the art, but the culture and the subcultures that followed this specific art and art style. That concludes this episode of the Random Anime Podcast. I hope you guys all enjoyed. Let us know in the comments below what your definition of anime is. Go ahead, post it in the comments. We'll go ahead and read. What was your first anime? I'm sure we have asked it in previous episodes, but post it again if you're brand new to the podcast. Hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so you guys get notified when the new episodes come out. Hit that thumbs up button because it means a lot to us. More thumbs up, the better. we're going to go ahead and build off into a whole bunch of different directions with this podcast. We're going to have special guests on here soon. So stay tuned for that. Episode 13 coming soon. And guys, as always, deuces up.
Peace.
Peace.
Bye bye.
Bye, y'all.